Mr. Walton, did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food?
But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. Welcome back. It's Thursday night, June the 4th. What a beautiful, gorgeous, strawberry full moon in the night sky. Well, here in Arkansas and everywhere else, we're live 5 nights a week here, 9 p.m. Pacific to 11 p.m. Pacific here on KTLK Digital Broadcasting, the Fringe FM. Call-in number for tonight is 1-800-588-0335. You can call into the show at, well, when we say the lines are open. If you want to talk to our guest, you can join our chat room at thefringe.fm/chat room. And if you really dig the show, you can support the show by becoming a patron or member at lightingthevoid.com. Just click on the patron logos or membership logos there and sign up and get all access to the Astral Journal Outside the Shack. All of the readings, all the cool stuff. You'll see all the different levels there. There's a lot of stuff there. And then, you can also grab some stuff from the shop. And we got some really cool stuff there. Really cool shirts, really cool tees. A lot of people have been buying a lot of women have been buying those racerback tank tops. They look really good, as well as the t-shirts. They're full color. They're really cool. So, if you want to support the show, you can do that. You can also donate too. And if you want to support the network, you can do that as well, because we could sure use it. If you go to the Fringe FM, there's a big donate button there. You guys got to go check out the new website. We're still polishing it up on the station, but it's like brand new and it's really good. And I got to thank our team at the Fringe FM for putting that together, because it's fantastic. It's got all the show page and stuff. You guys go check that out. I want to thank our sponsors too: Metaphorical Archaeology, Barbara Charlton. If you've had a paranormal experience that's caused you any type of trauma, you can get a free session and just give her a call at 214-995-3754. That stuff really works. I've taken it myself. It's called EFT. It's a tapping technique that works. It works on bets too. It's got a 70% success rate. And plus you get Barbara doing that too. So she's like Mother Goose kind of. I hope she don't get mad at me for calling her that, but it's perfect if you've got any of that stuff. So yeah, give her a call, 214-995-3754, or search Metaphorical Archaeology on Facebook. Big shout out to GetTheTea.com and AncientLifeOil.com, also our network sponsors. and partners over at UFOseekers.com, killing it in UFO investigations. So here's the thing, like, we're going to do a show tonight about alchemy, and Phoenix Aurelius is here with us, and he's a researcher, educator, and authentic alchemist who researches our past to find solutions for the future. He has been described by many as a modern Renaissance man who possesses encyclopedic knowledge of the traditional arts and sciences, with a particular focus on Pythagoreanism and Paracelsianism, and he runs the Phoenix Aurelius Research Academy, which is devoted to performing research and experimentation on the principles and practice of Paracelsian, Spagyric, I'm probably saying that wrong, medicine in the light of modern day science. His alchemical practice descends largely from the lineage of Frater Albertus of the late Paracelsus Research Society and Jean Dubuis of the late Philosophers of Nature. His ability to thoroughly cross-reference historical medical data with peer-reviewed science from the modern era is one thing that sets his work apart and makes his work with what he's doing quite unique. Man, you got to tell him, thanks for coming on the show. I'm interested in this. How did I say that word right? Spagyric.
Yeah, you're pretty darn close. It's typically pronounced Spagyria.
Spagyria. There you go. I was close, man. You got the redneck version of it, right? That's good. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll take it.
Right. So I'm at your website. I'm all in on this stuff. And first off, tell me how your research goes as far as like peer reviewed, where it's scientifically backed. How did you get to do that with this? Because most of the people I talk to, they're into alchemy and things like this. They're not really trying to match too much science with it. You know, they're picking up books from other bookstores and just kind of doing their own thing. But how do you separate yourself from all them?
Hey, that's a good question. So, you know, I was largely involved in the academic scene from a really early age, doing a whole lot of different types of research. And, you know, I went to a private school, and, you know, they were basically trying to curate us for being doctors and, you know, trying to be collegiate level kinds of individuals. And so I've always kind of had this interest in legitimizing alchemy and legitimizing herbalism and legitimizing all of these things in the scope of modern medicine, because I was always scoffed at by a lot of my peers who, you know, went on to become doctors, went on to do other things. And I took much more interest in metaphysics. And, you know, I heard you talking about that one woman who does the EFT during the introduction of tonight's show. Yeah. You know, I've been practicing vibrational medicine of all different sorts for damn near 20 years now. And so for me, being able to see the effects in my clients and being able to quantify what that looks like, I just wanted to be able to take it to the next level. So the way that I was able to do that is to keep fingers into different realms. I mean, I have probably, you know, 3 fingers at any given time into esoteric and metaphysical kinds of things, but then I also keep other fingers into academia and into peer-reviewed science, and my ability to research things and draw things out of the historical past and relate what they were saying to things that are contemporary and modern today and cross-references with peer-reviewed science. One of the things, like a lot of people would say, that kind of sets me apart and distinguishes my work from other people who are teaching or offering work in this realm.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. I got to tell you, like, we need this now more than ever, especially when it comes to things like agriculture and doing organic agriculture. I know you go into that too. Like, I talked to friends of mine about this. With everything that's going on now, you know, to put a little good energy into some organic, like just growing an organic garden. I mean, get together with your community, grow an organic garden. It puts years on your life, man. And you could just feel the difference. You can feel it. It doesn't even take long to start feeling the difference when you start eating organic food, things like that. So you're just, you know, we're kind of like scratching the surface when it comes to how we can feel and how our energetic bodies can be. Don't you think?
Oh man, I'm 100% with you right there. You know, it's like, if people are really feeling the difference when they switch to nutrient dense foods that are grown with high vibrations, so on and so forth, which really transcends just organic. But I mean, going from conventional to organic is like a world of difference. Going from organic to permaculture is another world of difference. Going from permaculture to permaculture biodynamic is another world of difference. And then you keep doing this. And then when you start to layer on a lot of the things that I have kind of initiated during my time, which I call alchemiculture, which is where everything is one continuous feedback cycle. It's like another octave up even from biodynamic agriculture. It really begins to up-level you in a way that it's almost hard to even connect with what it feels like to eat normal foods, or to, to even connect with the majority of people out there when they talk about dietary problems or health problems. I mean, they all just basically get eliminated. So how do you put alchemy into this? Because this is kind of neat to me, because I see like what you're doing. I've watched some of the videos on your work. I mean, this is the first time I've been introduced to what you're doing here. So I am not that far into alchemy, but I am an occultist, and it's kind of like what I've learned I think they might have got this backwards, actually. I don't know why, but what I've learned in occultism is they kind of teach you about astrology and then magic and then alchemy, right? And it's like alchemy is like the last stuff, or the deepest stuff, or the most secret stuff. But yet that is where all of like the great information is when it comes to building up our energetic bodies. But there's something there I think they're trying to protect as far as like our energies go, things of that nature. You got anything to speak on that? Because it is kind of a mystery. It's a big mystery to a lot of us. Yeah, let's go ahead and just kind of start at the beginning with that, because this can be a little bit of a chewy topic, but I'll just start and you interrupt me and we'll just kind of go from there.
Sure.
So really simply put, when you start studying occult philosophy, there's an entire branch of occult philosophy that is known as Hermeticism. And if you take a look into the roots of Hermeticism, there are really three branches of it. There is astronomy, then there's Kabbalah or magic, and then there's alchemy. Simply put, Jean Dubuis of the Philosophers of Nature, he ended up writing very prolifically and speaking prolifically on this topic. He said that alchemy is really important in being able to demonstrate what is an actual occult truth or a hermetic truth and what isn't, because there's so many different types of philosophies out there regarding Hermeticism. I mean, even today, when we take a look and we break Hermeticism, the different Hermetic orders out, we have the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, we have the Rosicrucians, we have, and there's multiple different sects of Rosicrucians as well. Yeah. We have Freemasonry and the degrees of Rose-Croix. We have, there's so many different takes on how, and then there's also Thelema, started by Aleister Crowley. There's so many different takes on Hermetic principles in modern age, especially, that how do you really sort out what is real and what isn't? Well, alchemy relays to everything in a holographic and fractal way, because like the Hermetic axiom says, that which is above is that which is below, and that which is below is that which is above. So if something is a truth in any of the higher dimensions, spiritual, causal, astral, etc., it can be proven and made tangible in the physical dimension by way of corollary truth. And so one of the things that we do as alchemists is constantly prove the concepts or disprove the concepts by finding the laboratory procedures that mirror those same spiritual truths and see if they actually work. And by doing this, we're able to vet out a whole lot of different ideas and substantiate things in a way that many other people can just philosophize and more or less just kind of talk about uncontested, because who can really contest the idea of a spiritual concept, or who can really contest the idea of a causal concept? Like if I tell you that the human energy field is actually a stellated dodecahedron, how are you going to prove me wrong?
Yeah, right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So with alchemy, we actually have the opportunity to be able to take a look into the physical world and to be able to transform it and to rearrange it, to exalt material, and to abide by processes that mirror the very same processes that a person would have to go by in order to logically arrive at that kind of conclusion, and to be able to vet it. So, for instance, case in point, if somebody says, like Buddhism, for instance, asserts that spirit can completely dissolve the ego. If you meditate enough and you allow spirit into your life, it can completely dissolve the ego. And in fact, in most sects of Buddhism, that is one of the primary goals. Okay, are we on the same page so far?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so in the laboratory, in alchemy, everything corresponds to sulfur, mercury, and salt, which we would call soul, spirit, and body. And so the spirit of the laboratory, especially when we're working in the vegetable realm, is alcohol. Mm-hmm. And the body of a material is going to be things the way that you find them in nature. They're imbued with soul, spirit, and body to some degree. But everything, just like you and I, we primarily have a body, and that's what we would consider life. So we go and we harvest an herb, and that contains the soul, spirit, and body of that herb. But if we want to extract the soul and the spirit out of that herb, there are a number of ways of doing it. And one of the main ways of doing that is to tincture it. And so we take a spirit, even, if you go to the liquor store today, you buy distilled spirits, right? So there's still holding on to a lot of this terminology from alchemical days. And essentially what we do is we take that spirit and we pour it over the herb, and that makes a tincture. Well, the tinctured portion of it, or the colored portion of that herb, is what alchemists have called for centuries now the fixed sulfur, or the fixed soul of a material. And it basically is like the ego. If we were to talk about the things that come out during the tincturing process that make an herb colored, that would be equivalent to like the color of your skin, the color of your hair, the types of clothes that you wear, the way that you represent yourself, the accent with which you talk, like things that are very characteristic to you, but they are a part of your fixed identity. They're part of what came with your body, so to speak, in the way that your body developed. Whereas the volatile soul, or essential oil in the vegetable realm, that is more about the essence of you. What did you come into this life with by way of a purpose or a mission or interests or inherent talents, things like that. So there's two very clear grades of soul. There's the higher soul, which always bonds with the spirit, and we can distill that over with the alcohol. It never comes separate from the alcohol. I mean, we can make it be separate, but it involves some very elaborate processes. That being said, the fixed sulfur, when we make a tincture of a material and set that tincture in a flask and distill out the alcohol, all of the fixed sulfur stays behind in the boiling flask, and it's colored. I mean, basically, for anybody who is familiar with making Rick Simpson oil or Phoenix tears, knows what that process looks like. You make a tincture out of the cannabis, you go ahead and you distill that tincture, and you're left with the Phoenix tears in your boiling flask. That's basically it. And what we would call that fixed sulfur is the fixed soul, or the identity. But what ends up being dissolved in the tincture during that tincturing process is the ego. So does spirit or alcohol dissolve ego or the fixed sulfur of a plant? Hell yeah, it does. Like, we can actually see that. We can demonstrate that as a spiritual truth right here in the laboratory.
That's fantastically well put, well defined. Thank you for saying that. Now, I want to go back to something that you said earlier. Now, this is something that, like, I've intuitively touched upon with a few guests, but you said that the human body, or the human energetic field, and I'm probably misquoting here, is a stellated dodecahedron. Is that what you said?
Yes, and I was just using an example because sure. I would assert that it's not. I would say that it's actually somewhere between an octahedron for most folks to a star tetrahedron for those who are really particularly conscious. But the Earth field itself tends to be, it's a very unstable field known as the stellated dodecahedron.
You know what's crazy about that is I've talked to a member of the Golden Dawn, like one of the modern members of the Golden Dawn here, one of the leaders. And he said that Hermetic alchemy is a very secret tradition that's been passed down via word, and it's not the Carl Jung version of alchemy, and it's not, he says it's not quite the puffer version of alchemy, although it does represent it, but that our energetic bodies are made up of what you're talking about, these three different substances, right? And that we are here to grow our energetic bodies through the soil of our physical bodies so that we can be able to stay conscious and move into starlight and not stuck into the lead of planets anymore. And I thought that was pretty kind of wild to hear, right? But when I read books like Revelations and they're describing the kingdom of heaven, and when you really map it out, and it, you know, if you talk about the walls and the length of man and angel, then you draw that out, and then you got the, you know, you got the pentagon, then it's the length and the width and the height. Well, of course, that's volume. So now you got a three-dimensional shape, and they're all the same side. Well, that's a dodecahedron. So like in Revelations, it's drawn out a dodecahedron. Now, I've said that to Dr. Richard Allen Miller and a couple other people on this show, and they've validated that, but said I was picking up on somebody else's work. But I think like inherently we kind of know this stuff when we start really getting involved with this. You start seeing or maybe remembering what this is all about. Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, and, you know, like the way that you introduced me today, you talked about my roots being in Pythagoreanism and Paracelsianism. Pythagoras being the person who was even behind Plato and Aristotle. So when we talk about Platonic solids and three-dimensional geometries, it really goes back to Pythagoras, who felt that the dimensions and fractions and mathematics were a way of explaining the universe in a way that transcends any dimension that you're looking at. It's kind of the universal constant behind all of those dimensions or all of those Kabbalistic worlds. And the geometry is absolutely a key part to it. And the pentagonal dodecahedron, like you were just referencing, is the one that corresponds to spirit. Yeah. And that is what all things have as a common denominator in their base structures here on Earth.
That's pretty wild, right? So if that's the truth, if that's the truth, which I totally like dig what you're doing, because you're taking things, that's what alchemists do, right? They take a fundamental thing that they find in nature, or let's just say in the macrocosm or in nature, and then break it down into spirits, like you're saying, or whatever processes that they see, as above, so below kind of thing. But what I've been told about this is the reason why there's so many secrets about alchemy, and it's one of like the most hidden mysteries of all time, is because there's actually some real danger to it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yes and no. Let me tell you, let me explain myself. There is some danger in performing alchemy in a couple of practical ways. For one, if you don't start with water or with the herbal kingdom practically in the laboratory, you're going to be dealing with temperatures like, for instance, pyrolytic distillation of the metal acetates. You're going to be working in temperatures in excess of 860 degrees and performing what are called pyrolytic or dry distillations. Something goes wrong there and it explodes, you're going to have very toxic vapors going all throughout the laboratory. It's going to kill you most likely. And if it doesn't kill you, it will definitely damage you almost irreversibly or irreversibly for life. And it's not very forgiving. That being said, if you start in the right place, the laboratory work will actually train your hand, guide your consciousness, train your focus to the point where doing those things is just as simple as, quote unquote, child's play and women's work, as it was described in many alchemical texts, historically speaking. It's not much more difficult than cooking, which is what historically they were calling women's work. And it becomes very fun and engaging and interesting, just like child's play. And your imagination goes into it as well. And so it's, in that way, it's not really dangerous. But let's talk about another practicality of it. If somebody gets too big for their britches, and there was such a person just a couple of years ago, his name was Logan Kennedy, and God rest his soul, he took his own life, or at least that was the story that got passed on to me. But he was kind of one of these individuals that got too big for his britches. He wanted to be, the master alchemist. He was a young kid, like 20s, 22, 23, something like this. And he got into the metallic work. Well, metals are perfectly coherent consciousness. And what I mean by that is that humans are very volatile consciousness, okay? When we take a look into the consciousness of a human individual, there are thousands of different forms of consciousness that need to be taken into account. There's cellular consciousness, all right? There's bacterial consciousness. There's fungal consciousness. we're composed of so many different microbes, so many different cells, so many different types of life, in addition to minerals, in addition to metals, in addition to vegetables, okay? All of those go into our constitution. But when you take a look at a metal, they are really just one pure atom expressed in aggregate clusters. And so they're very, very pure forms of consciousness. And so when somebody tries to open up a metallic material on its own and starts working with the metals, the consciousness that makes itself known is very, very dangerous if you haven't worked your way up and initiated yourself gradually to the different forms of consciousness, starting with humanity being the most volatile and working backwards through the animal realm and the vegetable realm and the mineral realm, and then finally to the metallic realm, and being able to assimilate the different methods of consciousness, or the different types of consciousness that we are composed of. And when you start working with those very pure metallic archetypes, they can really work a number on you. And this guy started selling the white stone, or the philosopher's stone made from silver, on eBay for like $5,000. Now, I got a call from Washington, D.C., from folks who had identified themselves as law enforcement, whether CIA, FBI, I don't know. They just said that they were law enforcement in the District of Columbia, and that they were concerned about Logan Kennedy at the time that he was selling the stone. And the thing that they talked to me about was that this poses a national security threat, because if people were able to transmute metals, then they're going to destabilize the monetary rate that things go for. For instance, gold sells for a certain amount of money per ounce, per troy ounce. Same thing with silver, and so on and so forth. That people can just generate these metals, then that suddenly devalues the metals themselves, and can also create massive devaluation of monetary systems and put the entire world economic sector into a really detrimental place. And this has actually always been the reason why alchemy has been outlawed in the past in certain countries as well, historically speaking, and also why kings or queens would finance alchemists, or princes would finance alchemists in the attempt to make gold, because then they would be able to usurp power over other nations or over other countries. They'd be able to fund and finance things that would allow for, better discoveries or a greater army, or so on and so forth. And so there are actual real life practicalities too that need to be taken into consideration. But the number one consideration realistically is sanity and well-being. So in that way, yes, alchemy does pose some potential dangers if a person has not purified themselves adequately and just begins performing what we would call the royal art, or performing high-level alchemy. That being said, if a person starts out learning as they should, working with water and working with the herbs and making their 7 dailies and then moving on successively and not rushing their path, then it's a very, very safe thing that not only would be safe for the practitioner, but would be highly beneficial for the practitioner and their community and their planet, because they'd be trained in how to make medicines, how to stabilize consciousness. There's so many benefits actually of practicing alchemy. I don't think that there's a single person out there that I would suggest shouldn't practice alchemy, to be perfectly honest.
Right. Like it's, there's that someone's asking in the chat, what about spiritual alchemy though? I think we kind of touched on that. Like, so if you actually have a course on your website about getting started with Spagyrics and doing the Spagyric tincture and then filtering a tincture, that book, there's a book that, what was it, Frater Albertus wrote? I forget the name of it, but that's like there's a lot of basic books out there too, but I think what your course looks pretty cool as well, because I guess, and I want you to like really correct me here if I'm stating this wrong, because I want to try to answer the question for that person in chat. If something happens on a microcosmic level, then it happens on a macrocosmic level, or even a spiritual level within inside us. It's just really trying to figure out what the correspondences are, the elements themselves. But is alchemy like an energetic thing, or is it a spiritual thing? That's where I get confused, because I've had people tell me it's an energetic thing. You hear all these people talk about, rainbow bodies, bodies of light, solar bodies. If you study Rosicrucianism, then it's the solar body. And then if you study like Eastern stuff, it's the diamond body. And yet it all kind of looks like they're talking about alchemy to me at the same time, right? I don't know. It could be two different things. What do you think?
Well, yeah. Okay. So at least I'm trained primarily in the Western tradition. Okay. I am very well read on other traditions of alchemy, including ancient Taoist alchemy, as well as the Vedic form of alchemy, which is primarily still alive in what's known as the Rasa Shastra tradition. That being said, what I can speak from very authoritatively and from experience is the Western tradition. What I can say is there's no such thing as purely spiritual alchemy or purely psychological alchemy or purely physiological alchemy. It is a completely unified tradition where all three things go hand in hand, and you can't actually ascertain any of the truths from one of those areas of the three philosophic essentials, being soul, spirit, and body, without having proven it for yourself over and over and over again in nature. Nature really is the thing that teaches us and guides us and shows us the way. And if it can be made manifest and if it can be isolated using natural techniques in the laboratory, then that's where we arrive at the spiritual truth. So many different shysters throughout the ages have claimed to know different spiritual truths or spiritual teachings, and they have absolutely no substantial basis to them whatsoever. They may feel good when you think about them or when you tie up your emotional energy into them. Astrally, they can have a very powerful egregore behind them, and therefore maybe even have some effect, but they are not perennially true, meaning that they must be abided by from the particular subjective vantage point that the teacher is offering. And usually what people are getting themselves into in studying quote unquote spiritual alchemy or psychological alchemy is that they're tapping into the egregore of the person who created that particular method. So for instance, the Golden Dawn. Okay, so Israel Regardie, okay, huge proliferative author concerning the Golden Dawn. In fact, he authored the books known as the Golden Dawn. Israel Regardie, at the end of his life, ended up studying with Frater Albertus here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And he actually ended up damaging himself by working in the metallic realm. That's how he ended up dying from complications of respiratory failure, because he was making what was known as the star regulus of antimony. And as he was, quote unquote, feeding the black dragon, which is to say adding this antimony and steel and a number of other things into a furnace, it emits these huge plumes of dark black smoke. And so they call it feeding the black dragon. But what ends up happening is that those fumes of smoke sometimes, because you usually do this outside, I've never known anybody to have a vapor hood good enough to do this inside, the wind currents can drag that smoke towards you. Okay. Yeah, and he ended up breathing in a certain amount of that and damaging himself. But before he damaged himself, and while he was studying at the Paracelsus Research Society with Frater Albertus, he ended up saying, I wish that I had never written the book, The Philosopher's Stone, because I talked about alchemy in a way that was purely psychological or allegorical and spiritual. He's like, if I had only known that there was an actual physiological tradition that went along with it, I would not have reduced the alchemist's actions to being as base as they were and to being as allegorical as he chalked them up to be. And this is true for almost everybody out there, even high-level Masons, even people in the Rose-Croix degrees of their orders. They oftentimes don't understand that physiological alchemy is an actual thing, or they don't have the literature or the pathways or the teachers in a lot of cases to be able to get into it in a way that is actually practical to the point where they understand the truths and can understand the deeper meanings, and it just becomes very lofty and philosophical for them. And so, you can't actually practice purely spiritual alchemy without making grave errors and mistakes and assumptions, oftentimes that are nothing more than mental masturbation, unless you're practicing physiological alchemy as well,
Well, I hope that answers your question there in chat. Thank you for answering that. We got to take our first break here, but I want to dig deeper into this and see it like in the practical versions of how we can make this work for us better in our lives. The website is phoenixaurelius.org for reference. We'll be right back. More Lighting the Void coming up.
Carlton from Metaphorical Archaeology. If you've ever had a traumatic paranormal experience, the effects of it may stay with you for years. Who do you talk to? You can't go to conventional help. What we do is we use emotional freedom techniques or tapping to actually neutralize the effects of that event. Maybe when you tell the story now, your heart races and your palms get sweaty. You don't even want to think about it because you don't know how to neutralize that. That's what EFT tapping does. It neutralizes those emotions. The circuit that was recorded on is gone. The energy flows freely and you're free of it. And that's what emotional freedom is all about. We offer this as a pro bono service, but this is something that I offer because no one, it seems, is helping people with these experiences. If you'd like to reach me, it's really easy. My cell phone is 214-995-3754. Please leave a message. I will get back to you as quickly as possible. Or you can email me, barb.eft@gmail.com. And EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. Reach out to me. It's confidential. This works. You won't believe the results.
All right, man, this is Crow 777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
Right, me old Chinas. I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Light in the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology, and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon, and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of the fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
From a cave in the depths of your mind, it's Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you're interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Hey, I'm J.M. DeBoard, and when I want to talk about dreams, I look up my man Joe Roop and his show, Lighting the Void.
All right, welcome back. I'm Joe Roop. This is Lighting the Void. tomorrow night, Friday night, we're not going to be doing open lines. We're actually going to have very special guests come on. Candace Sanderson is going to be on, and she wrote The Reluctant Messenger, and actually wrote a little spill about me in there when I was talking to her during the break the last time she was on. And it's all about angelic visitation and how that happens in our lives and how they come in and kind of change our lives for us. And so that's what's going to happen tomorrow night. But tonight our guest is Phoenix Aurelius, and the website again for references, phoenixaurelius.org. And specifically before the break, we're talking about Spagyric alchemy and all of the cool stuff. You go to his website, he's got a course on Spagyria, looks like 1010 or 101 kind of thing where you can start learning how to do this stuff. And I was asking him during the break, and thank you for coming on the show again, asking you during the break about how, like, everybody's takes on alchemy and this initiatic process of the Western ceremonial system. When you look into it, they start you out in like neophyte or whatever, then you work through the elements, then the planets, and for some reason, some of these, I guess what they call themselves adepts, they don't want you getting into alchemy till later. And yet, if you read a book like Liam Thomas Christopher's Kabbalah Magic and the Great Work of Self-Transformation, which is about Rosicrucian magic too, you know, he has you start reading things like Frater Albertus as the Alchemical Handbook as soon as you get into like the Earth grade. So, and that's fascinating what you said too. I don't remember, and I've read the Philosopher's Stone, but I don't remember that part. You think I would have remembered that Israel Regardie was talking about, that he wished he would have knew all that, because that's very interesting. It's almost like, is this the mystery? Is this the mystery that everything in every school has been hiding from us? That's what it kind of feels like to me. Like, this is what they've been hiding the whole time, you know?
Well, yeah, that's my own personal take based on experience, because when I read most authors of Hermetic veins or occult veins, and this is in no way meant to be offensive, but they really know nothing or next to nothing about practical alchemy or what it really means or what it really involves. And so they usually save it for last and then just barely scrape it as if they might know something that is very lofty that they're not going to reveal to you because it's such a high level secret, when in actuality they really just don't know about it. And that's very obvious by their tone and by the way that they come across with it. They might refer to alchemical authors and by inference suggest that, oh, because I know this alchemical author's work exists and I've read it, I know more than the average Joe or whatever. But it's all smoke and mirrors. Realistically, is like Frater Albertus said, unless a person, now he was the highest level of Rosicrucian that you can get in the KORC, the Kabbalistic Order of the Rosy Cross, based out of Paris, France. Okay, he was initiated in Flamel's house. He was, which is still used as headquarters for Rosicrucian meetings today. But when you really don't know what the hell you're talking about, there tends to be a certain level of like mysticism around the whole thing, where it's not really very mystical the way that people make it. It's a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of time and money and energy that goes into it. But only by doing that do you really ground in the spiritual teachings and the Kabbalistic teachings that are made manifest in a lot of the different orders and different degrees of those orders into reality. Only then do you really begin to harness them and understand them. So for me, and also for Jean Dubuis of the Philosophers of Nature, which is also available in the French as Les Philosophers de la Nature, they are very much so tied hand in hand. You can't actually perform Kabbalah or Kabbalistic magic very effectively without first having understood how the dynamics of that work and what each planetary sephira looks like in very practical ways throughout multiple different kingdoms. Because it's like Jean Dubuis always used to say, alchemy is the only aspect of the three different varieties of Hermeticism, that being alchemy, astronomy, and Kabbalah, that you can't deceive yourself and you can't initiate to a higher level until you actually have a completely firm grasp of the level, because it's all self-driven and it's self-initiated. And if your experiment doesn't work, then it tells you that you didn't grasp it properly. And when it does work, then it tells you you're ready to move on to the next grade. And aside from that, you usually have grand imperators, or you have orators, or you have other different people, depending on the order that you're in, being able to tell you when you're ready to basically initiate into the next degree. And it's simply just not that way in alchemy. Either your experiment works or it doesn't, and there's absolutely no self-deception that can go into it.
That's really cool. That's really cool, because a lot of the stuff in Hermeticism, and when people start going down these roads, I was reading this book, I think it was Llewellyn's new book on magic, and Lon-Malo Duquette was talking in there. He's like, there's really no magic 101. It seems like when you start out Hermeticism and learning this stuff, that you're just getting, you're learning things from all different sides, and every time you learn something else, you got to learn something else, and it's confusing. You wouldn't believe how many people message me and be like, man, where do I start? And yeah. I'm starting to think it's maybe you should start with this. Like, if you started with this and then started reading everything else, do you think that would help? I mean, if people, because the way you have your course structured, it looks like anybody could do this if they just start from, lesson 0 on up.
Well, that's exactly right. That's the way that it really happens, is that you start out as a complete neophyte and you really know nothing. And a good teacher will show you exactly what you need and how to do it to attain the realizations for yourself. And once you follow the procedures and you attain the realizations for yourself, then you can actually vet whether the consciousness is real or not, because nobody's telling you what the consciousness is that you're supposed to achieve, per se. It's, here's the technique, apply the technique, and you have that experience. And it just so happens that everybody who performs that has the same experience if they have done it and done it properly. And so, realistically, esotericism just in general, Hermeticism, is really not very difficult at all to get a grasp of or to practice if you start with your foot traversing all 3 realms in the triangle. And you notice if you're involved in Rosicrucianism at all, you understand that they're constantly greeting by the triangle and all these other things. What does that mean? What are the 3 steps of Indra in Hinduism? What are all these things? It means that you traverse first with your physical foot, and then you step into the psychological realm, and you see if the things that you have applied physically are also applicable in the psychological realm. And if they are, then you traverse once more into the spiritual realm. And if the things that you have performed physiologically and psychologically are also spiritual truths, then you can complete the triangle by stepping back into the physical realm and having completed this whole cycle. If you don't understand what the truths actually are, then they become very, very lofty ideals that are hard to attain, hard to ground, hard to explain to others. However, what it takes most metaphysicians or most Hermeticists hours or books to explain, I can do that in a very short period of time, walking them through a simple laboratory process. And once they see the process done and how to do it properly, they can replicate the process and see for themselves if they achieve the same result.
Wow, that's really cool, man. So if we lived in a world where everybody knew this information, I mean, they understood lessons 0 through 11 on your course here, on one of these courses, what kind of world do you think we would live in? You think, as far as health, as far as the weather, as far as how we treat each other, it would really change things, wouldn't it? Big time.
Well, I think that it could. Now, the Spagyric 101 is really kind of like the beginning swimming lesson, okay? It tosses you into the pool, but you're still in the shallow end. Mm-hmm. It teaches you how to work with materials in nature in a way that you can not only perform the work, but begin to understand what the esoteric value is of performing that work and what the psychological and spiritual truths are of performing that work. And it gives you the ability to perceive that for yourself in a way where you are the one who is drawing away the takeaways. Nobody's force feeding them upon you or giving you the answers, so to speak. It's you being able to actually perform it. To be perfectly honest, I think that the type of world that people would see is one where they have less reliance on the medical establishment if they were to take that particular course. I do have another course that's already filmed and it'll be coming out soon. It's known as Transpersonal Alchemy, and I've taught this course live for years and years and years. I've done workshops, I've done seminars, I've done, actual, 10 and 20 week courses on this. But basically the transpersonal alchemy is probably the most relevant, and I'd be more than willing to go into detail about what that involves so that people can kind of get a taste for the different processes, so that alchemy becomes a whole lot less of a mystery to them, because every different process that we perform in the laboratory also has a psychological counterpart process that happens with it, and also a spiritual process that happens with it. And this is how we're able to vet things in the laboratory, is that not only the significance of the material that you're working with, or the aspect of the material, either the soul, the spirit, or the body of that material, but also the process that any or each of those goes through is equally as important in being able to deduce what the truths are. And so there's this kind of sort of a matrix that begins to form in terms of which philosophic essentials, soul, spirit, or body, am I working with? What realm am I working with this in? The physical, the psychological, or the spiritual? And what process am I performing on this particular material in this particular realm? And all three of those have to be taken into account. And that's what literally ends up creating the personal transformation that so many people mistake alchemy for being just a purely psychological or a purely spiritual process. It is all three, but the way that that happens is through the method of transpersonal alchemy.
Man, I don't even know. So do you do certain processes, like, because I'm into traditional astrology, like Renaissance astrology, stuff like that. So when they're making talismans and they're making amulets and things like that, they do it like on a sidereal zodiac most of the time with the 7 traditional planets, and they kind of I'm sure you know a little bit about that. I know a lot about that. Does this process involve timing as well in any kind of fashion? I'm just curious about that. It's kind of an offhand question.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. In fact, you can make spagyrics and alchemical products not according to sidereal astronomy, but if you align the planetary forces, then you're also imbuing in the astral power and the cosmic powers of any particular material, thus rendering it into a talisman all of its own, something that is actually edible or able to be taken inside of one's body. And it's by that method that a lot of my research subjects, like for instance, just today and yesterday, I worked with 2 different clients. One client has diabetes, or technically diabetes mellitus. And this client is lacking, so in Spagyria, in the medical cosmology of Spagyria that Paracelsus founded, there are 5 different causes of disease. The cause of disease of the stars is the first cause of disease, called ens astrale, or sometimes referred to also as ens astrorum. And essentially, we go through and we check all of the planets and all of the constellations to find out where there might be an imbalance. And that can be done not only astrologically by finding the time, the hour, the day of the actual disease and when it started to set in, or when that client started to experience health effects or symptoms of that disease. But it can also be performed by comparing the natal chart and seeing just general predispositions that might be present throughout the course of one's entire life, and so on and so forth. That being said, I have 2 clients, one with diabetes mellitus, who came down with diabetes, and this happened to show that the individual had a lunar imbalance that was creating the diabetes. This person also has uterine cancer, and also has stomach and digestive problems, all of those things being governed over by the moon. The moon governs over the stomach and the breasts. It governs over the mind as well, and this person kind of has some brain fog and other things like that. It also deals with the distribution of life force throughout the body, diabetes mellitus being one of the things that disrupts that life force drastically. And so we were able to see this. In order to be able to help address that balance, this person needs what's known as an ENS tincture. And ENS is Paracelsus. He created lots of different terms. He created the entire pharmacology and cosmology of spagyric medicine, in fact. But he ended up saying that the ENS is where we derive our term entity today. It means like the energy behind something. And this person needs a spagyric ENS tincture of chickweed being governed over by lunar energy in order to be able to heal their issues. And so there are also some pseudo-Paracelsian works. I say pseudo because they were published under Paracelsus' name posthumously, but they were not actually written by Paracelsus. One of those actually being the Archidoxes of Magick. And in the Archidoxes of Magick, he talks about, or the author talks about, multiple different seals of the zodiac that can be made to heal different conditions, and a number of other celestial medicine talismans like to heal gout and other things that can be made. And all of those are astronomically tied up. But when you compare the effectiveness of those seals to the actual proper medicines, spagyric medicines that can be made, they don't even hold a candle. Time after time after time after time in all of my research clients, the things that repetitively take care of the diseases the way that they're supposed to be and are alleged to be are actually the properly made spagyric medicines according to proper astronomical cycles. So yeah.
That's a hard, that's kind of a hard sell though when it comes to peer-reviewed stuff, wouldn't you say? Like, I mean, I totally believe in this with my whole heart. You know that, right? Like, you can tell. But man, to get science to back it is another thing. Like, are you even like taking on that battle, or are you just not even worrying about it?
No, I am taking on that battle, and I might be the first to really try and take this on, because what I've done is I've taken all of the different processes that were established by Paracelsus in the 1530s and then later established by other Paracelsian physicians throughout the 1600s and early 1700s, and then taken all of the work of the Rosicrucians, who primarily preserved and encapsulated alchemy in a little time shell so that we would be able to inherit it and practice it today. And then to subject that to multiple different forms of case studies. And then I'm at the point now where I've trained enough people that we're starting to engage in certain peer review. And we use numerous different instrumentations to be able to do this. One of the things that I use is a radionics instrument known as the SE5 1000 Gold. And we perform IDF analysis in order to see if we are arriving at the same conclusions from an energetic level, because IDF stands for intrinsic data field. And so what we're doing is we're checking the energetic field of the materials that we make, or the energetic field of the research clients that we have, to be able to see if we're even arriving at the same conclusions. And in the cases where we are, and then able to ask a series of questions and be able to calibrate those questions using the intrinsic data field instrumentation, we're able to see if we're getting the same answers of, is this the way that this person needs to have this imbalance addressed, or so on and so forth. And over 90% of the time, since I've had my own instrumentation, 80% of the time when I was outsourcing to another laboratory to do this analysis form for me, we were able to regularly address the things that people have not been able to address through modern medical means, through Chinese medicine, through Ayurvedic medicine, through Siddhic medicine, through Aristotelian medicine, through all the different types of energy healings that you could possibly imagine. They were not able to solve the problems for this individual, yet when they approach it from a spagyric angle and either work with proper IDF balancing frequencies or else with spagyric medicines that I make here by my own hand in my own laboratory, we're able to account for those things. So I'm currently in the phase with the Research Academy where we're training other people to be able to utilize this intrinsic data field instrumentation to be able to see if we can arrive at the same conclusions in terms of analysis and getting to what the root cause of the problem is and what's going to fix it. And then I've also, for 15 years, been training other individuals in how to perform laboratory work, so that I have a number of different people that I can call upon to say, hey, you make this laboratory material, like, for instance, the Spagyric ends tincture of chickweed, and then go ahead and send it off to me. And then I will have my team peer review using IDF analysis to determine whether or not this is going to be an appropriate medicine. And they let me just know, when they made it, how they made it, so on and so forth, so that we know all the criteria about it. And then we can actually determine what the differences are between the items that have been made through me or through them. Energetic purity is a major thing of that, the constellational energies, the planetary energies and signatures, so on and so forth, that material has. And so it's a really slow process. First of all, not only did I have to train lots of people, and am I still training people in order to be able to get to this point, but I'm still 5 to 10 years out from right now before I have published peer-reviewed data in this realm where enough people are trained to be able to operate this. But it starts off with case studies, and that's what I've been producing for the last 2.5 years, is showing all of these case studies of how I've taken clients who have had, say, Hashimoto's disease for 20 years, research what their problem is using IDF analysis, and then been able to either balance that out using IDF balancing broadcasts, which is a form of energetic healing that I feel is very superior. Dr. Richard Gerber talks about it in his books, Vibrational Medicine and the Handbook to Vibrational Medicine. There's a lot of other books besides. But also we deal with spagyric tinctures, spagyric essences, spagyric ends tinctures, different types of things from the herbal realm, so that my laboratory doesn't get shut down. Because if I start using metallic medicines, even though there's no trace of metals in the medicines once they're finished, FDA comes in, they want to seize us. But in the same breath, they'll inject you full of thimerosal in a vaccine. So
that doesn't. I was just thinking that. Yeah, exactly. Man, this is fascinating stuff. We're at the top of the hour, though. We'll open the phone lines up, too, when we come back. If you want to call in and ask our guests any questions at 1-800-588-0335. I'm Joe Roop. This is Lighting the Void. We're live on the Fringe FM. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this.
And you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by paranormal talk radio? You'll love the new paranormal radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Hey, this is No Way Jose, a Northern California Piscean stuck in the Arizona desert. I'm a void walker, and I got the shoes to prove it. So what do I do when my soul yearns to delve deep into the realm of the unknown? I aim my satellite straight into the night sky and catch a smooth ride on the KTLK-DB radio waves. I tune into Lighting the Void with Joe Roop on the Fringe FM.
Joe, Lighting the Void is the best show on the planet. This is Barney, your friend from Facebook. Thank you and all the crew for all you do. Namaste, my friend.
This is Macon from the foothills of North Carolina, and I am a void walker.
G'day, void walkers. This is Lily from down under Australia. The world may be small, but the enigma is greater. So let your curiosity take you for a journey with Joe Roop.
Hey, this is V, coming in from Central Maryland, and I am a void walker.
This is Kevin Doherty, a beginner void walker. I'm from Vancouver, BC. I know a little about a lot, and as Leonard Skinner said, I'll guess the rest. I learned a lot from Mr. Root and the show, and heard it from the beginning. I knew right then he was going to be a new art gal. Thanks for all your shows, and keep it up.
Hey, this is Derek from Mass, a.k.a. the Night Stalker, and I'm a Void Walker.
This is Mark from Chicago, and I walk the void to ascertain what is consciousness.
My name is Jared Johnson, and I'm from Humboldt County, California. I do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. I do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm a Void Walker. Thanks, Joe Root.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to The Fringe FM.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Have you ever seen an ad or banner which brought you a feeling that someone is reading your mind or even listening to your conversations? Your online data is being used against you. Surfshark is a VPN service that makes online privacy protection easy and attainable. You can use it on as many devices as you'd like simultaneously. Surfshark encrypts all internet traffic sent to and from your devices and ensures that your IP address remains hidden. The VPN service that we use at UFO Seekers, plus 1 month free for $1.99 a month. Visit surfshark.deals/seekers.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails. Stores with their shelves stripped bare. ATMs can't operate. Deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand 3 truths. FEMA is broke. The system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in 1 business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Hey, Fringe listeners, this is Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange Radio, asking you to join us live Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Fringe FM. Visit beyondthestrange.com for links to chat, social media, and schedules of the show. And remember, always stay strange. Hasta.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, there's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on the Fringe FM.
Paranormal News, I'm Brad Bernards. Scientists found something peculiar coming from the center of the Milky Way galaxy, a previously undiscovered signal they think is coming from the supermassive black hole at the heart of our galaxy, according to Futurism.com. The team of Keio University researchers think that the signal is caused when the accretion disk around the black hole flares up and gives off extremely rapidly rotating radio spots, according to research published last month in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. The flickering signals aren't entirely new. Scientists have previously discovered larger and slower flare-ups, but thanks to the Atacama Large Millimeter-Submillimeter Array, now scientists can detect more minute emanations than ever before. It is only human to look to the cosmos and ponder if there is another Earth out there. Here's Dr. Michelle Bannister, lecturer in astrophysics at the University of Canterbury College of Science.
Every star that you can see with your eyes in the night sky probably has at least one planet. That's what we have the idea of the amount of planets that we have in our galaxy.
Fortunately, while many members of our species have had our heads pointed toward the ground amid the pandemic, astronomers are looking up at the sky. And lo and behold, they found a new super-Earth, the designation for rocky planets more massive than ours, yet with similar conditions otherwise. Salon reports astronomers at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand came across what the lead author, Dr. Herrera Martin, describes as a rare planet which has a similar size and orbit to our Earth and is located near the Milky Way's central bulge of stars. Connect with the news at parabnormalradio.com. I'm Brad Bernards, Parabnormal News.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-drift. Contact on 9 in orbit.
The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. We're in our second hour here at Phoenix Aurelius. The website is phoenixaurelius.org. An entire hour talking about alchemy and Spagyric alchemy and what alchemy really is. It is a fundamental thing in hermetics, and it's fantastic. One of the greatest mysteries in our history that goes way, way back. And I'm really learning a lot of stuff, even during the breaks, talking to this guy about some alchemical truth and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and open up the phones if you want to talk to our guest tonight. It's 1-800-588-0335. And I think we have our first caller here. It's like 214 area code. You're on the air with Phoenix Aurelius. Who are you speaking with?
Brent.
Brent, how can I help you, brother? What's your question?
Yes. Good evening, gentlemen. Phoenix Aurelius, correct? Is your guest?
That's right.
Perhaps some sort of video presentation of some of this would be a little bit better to absorb. It's kind of hard to get it over the radio. But are you saying that the what was it, chickpea or chickpea weed, or that you're investigating that it's as an herb, I'm assuming, and you're using the surreal or the Vedic, the actual size of the constellations and everything as a determiner, which I believe has to be valid, because if you're not actually using the actual size of those, then you're shooting in the dark anyway. But and then somehow that there's certain moments, because there's different things in the astrological signs like Euphicus and that type of thing that are meant mainly for healing aspects, when they're aligned with the moon, the sun, and different things, the different configurations. But are you saying that you just take it's not alive, is it? Is it dead when you're doing these tests, and then you're saying that you're somehow correlating the dosage to a rhythm pattern produced by that, and it's producing results for you? And my question is it alive, the plant itself, or is it dead, or is it seasonal or something of that nature? And then once you do that, you just actually can develop a dosage or something of that nature for somebody to heal with, along with other, like you said, a vibrational possible, like the I can't remember his name. What's the guy's name that has the frequency generator that kills viruses and stuff like Royal?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah. That's a good question, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Brent. I really appreciate you asking that. So, yeah, basically in Spagyric cosmology, Paracelsus came up with something that was called the Doctrine of Signatures. And the Doctrine of Signatures basically says that every plant or every material grows according to its own nature. And those natures show parallel natures to the planets from which they derive. And so everything has a planetary archetype. And in traditional Hermetic astrology, there's only 7 planets that they were aware of. And so each of the 12 constellations corresponds to the 12 different constellations. I currently use 13 constellations. I heard you mention that as well, Ophiuchus. And there is some slight discrepancy between the way Paracelsus would have practiced in the 1530s and what I'm practicing with today, but I do use proper sidereal astrology. I recommend people who are interested in learning the astrology that I use, check out Athen Chimenti's website at masteringthezodiac.com. And basically...
subscribe to him. Yeah, great. Yeah.
Absolutely. So essentially the way that this works is that chickweed is just an herb that, grows all the time. And yes, it is alive when we perform an extraction on it for the ends in particular. But it can also be, if you want to refer to it as dead, we would refer to it more like mummified or preserved when you dry an herb out and use it in that regard. But we can make spagyric tinctures of it. We can make spagyric essences of it. And there are multiple different grades of essences. There's essences per distillatio. There's essences per circumscindo, there's philosophic essences. There's lots of different grades and ways of working with materials in spagyric cosmology. It's not just straightforward like there's one preparation. There are dozens of preparations in order to be able to get out the particular methods of consciousness that you want and in what proportions. So every herb has a soul, a spirit, and a body, just like you have a soul, a spirit, and a body. And in what proportion we contain the soul, and whether it's mostly the fresh soul of the volatile oils that primarily come from fresh plant material, though in cases like lavender and orange peel, they can also come from dried material. The fixed sulfur, which we would call for instance, terpenoids, alkaloids, different things that are not part of the volatile oil structure of the plant. The spirit, which is really in the vegetable kingdom that reduces down to alcohol, waters, and vinegars. And also the body and all herbal material, well, not all herbal materials, but about 90% plus of the vegetable kingdom reduces down to potassium carbonate as its chemical structure when we work with the body of things. But we can also reduce it down to potassium acetate as well. So there's those two forms, potassium carbonate, potassium acetate. And so which form of the body, which form of the spirit, which form of the soul do you use, and how much of the proportions of each, and what were the methods of attaining those or obtaining those? And then how do you mix them all back together to reconstruct a medicine in the exaltation of the material? That all makes a huge difference in spagyric medicine. So chickweed itself is governed over by the planetary sephira of the moon. Okay, so it deals with lunar energies. And in this particular case, chickweed was able to cure the imbalances of the diabetes mellitus of the individual when we perform the IDF analysis, as well as looking into the medical astrology of this particular client. And the same thing is true with another client that I have who has obstructive bowel disorders, as well as some cerebral spinal fluid issues that are creating what is known as a Tarlov cyst. And so both of these conditions are able to, I can't use the word treated because I'm not a medical doctor, but be able to address the energetic imbalances that were found as being due to, in Spagyric cosmology, ens astrale, or the cause of disease due to the stars, in both of these individuals. And I have many more case studies beyond that, but I think that answer should probably suffice for now.
Yeah, that was a great answer. I appreciate it. And what about just eating it?
Good question.
It's not going to do nearly the same thing. It does definitely contain lunar energy when you eat it, but just to give you a basic idea, if I were to make an essence, a philosophic essence, which would contain the essential oil of the material, chickweed itself doesn't actually have that much essential oil. So if I were to make a philosophic essence, you would probably have to eat on the upside of maybe 100 pounds of the material to do the very same thing inside of your body.
You'd have to be out grazing, huh?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, you have to be out grazing in the pasture. Okay. I see where you're coming from. It's fascinating. Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
By all means, thank you.
Man, I got to tell you, like, most of this stuff is way, way over my head, but it is like that. It's fascinating too to know that we can all learn this stuff, though. Like, you guys should go to the website, seriously, phoenixaurelius.org. I mean, you teach everything from the labware to the basic Spagyric stuff, and that's cool. This stuff that you're teaching, I'm trying to get people to really recognize what I'm saying here. The stuff that he's teaching on this website is literally stuff that people back in the day, where we're talking about people like Paracelsus or even Agrippa, whoever, where they really had to like study their arses off to know things like this through, God knows how many experimentations to figure these things out. I mean, it's all here in your website. That's pretty cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, well, and when people, like I do offer, we temporarily stopped because we didn't know what the response to SARS-CoV-2 / COVID-19 was going to be when everything first stopped. Or when everything first dropped. So we stopped offering our immersion study courses, but I usually offer, and it will be offering again very, very soon, immersion study classes and also some group classes. And we've also recently made plans as a result of all of this COVID nonsense to get to offering more YouTube materials and different types of things like that, just so that people can tune into the consciousness and pick up little bits here and there, or dive in as deep as they would like to, because like there's really nothing that isn't alchemy. Like I'm constantly telling people, it's like, okay, all energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It just changes form, which is to say transform. And alchemy is, if nothing else, the art and science of transformation. Mm-hmm. And so what is there that exists by way of any energy form that does not abide by the laws of alchemy? There isn't any. And so suddenly alchemy ends up taking center stage, regardless of what you're interested in, whether it's somatics and body movement and dancing and healing like that, or whether it's psychological work like Jung was interested in, or, whether it's spiritual stuff, or whether it's, in the laboratory, or whether it's making your own beer at home, or, it doesn't matter, man. Like all of that actually has to be encompassed by alchemy. And as alchemists, we don't get the luxury of just studying one thing. We have to be well-versed in everything. And in that way, I have my finger, like you could probably name a subject and I could tell you exactly how it fits into the alchemical paradigm that I need to perform and study regularly. It's just, a wide part of what ends up happening. And in the course of a single lifetime, you can't master it all. For sure. That's maybe why, Tibetan practices, and there are other practices in the West as well, but Tibetan practices such as Dzogchen are really important to be able to carry your experience in this life into a new incarnation.
I am curious of what your thoughts are on COVID, though. I mean, why has it baffled the medical industry to this point? And could alchemy actually play in a role right now? Because I think I know the answer to this, but understanding these alchemical principles, Spagyric specifically, could play a role in knocking this thing out or helping. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think this stuff should be more prevalent. It should be more well known. It shouldn't be hidden so much.
Yeah, well, for those who really want to get the in-depth dive, Dr. Andrew Kaufman and I were both co-hosted on a discussion on rogue ways, and I believe that episode is now up on my website under the media section. If you go to the podcast, it's the most recent rogue ways episode. You could also type in rogue ways Kaufman Aurelius or Kaufman Phoenix on YouTube, and it will pull up that same interview. But I've talked very openly about COVID-19 and about SARS-CoV-2. In fact, a large portion of my research subjects the last couple of months have been dedicated very exclusively to COVID-19 clients. And I have a 100% success rate at the present moment in eliminating the symptoms of the disease and also showing through intrinsic data-filled analysis and exclusively using intrinsic data-filled technology in eliminating those symptoms. So I haven't found it to be difficult to work with at all. My concepts around viruses are different than a lot of people. Dr. Kaufman is one who says that viruses don't exist, actually, and he was the first person to change my mind about a lot of the peer-reviewed science that exists and why it's such crap, actually, out there about viruses and viromes even ever being isolated. There's never been a virus to have been isolated using sound science, as far as I'm aware. And if you want to learn more about it, you can just tune into the very beginning of that Rogue Ways episode where we both talk about it. Dr. Andrew Kaufman also has a lot of other information about this, but there's a growing number of doctors who feel the same way, that the science that was used and primarily perpetuated by a doctor named Enders in the 1950s was entirely bunk. It is not good at all. When you are conglomerating bacterial cells, human cells, monkey cells, animal cells all together, and then trying to extract RNA and saying that now you found the virus after treating it with antibiotics and antifungal medicines and anti-clotting agents and all these things, and then saying that you found the RNA sequence, that's utter rubbish science. There's no way of proving that any of the sequences that you have are from a single organism at all, because they've isolated nothing. It's a conglomerate. And so
that's exactly right. They've isolated nothing. That's a problem with the technology we have these days, right? They should have done that already.
They
Absolutely.
should have. And if they wanted to, it's like Dr. Kaufman and I, now I have to give credit where credit's due. He was the first one to expose me to this information. He had a couple of people that he references in a lot of his information. But as far as we can tell, there's been absolutely no positive isolation. And I tried, like he put out a challenge, basically, or at least I interpret it as a challenge if for anybody who thinks that a virus actually exists in the form that peer-reviewed science was mentioning, to be able to pull up all of the data that they can and send it to him, and then just use logic to have a conversation. So I did, and it was a back and forth for like 2.5 weeks. And he was like, well, let's just go through this and see if you agree that this is good science. And when we went through it together, I had to basically concede my point. No, this is actually bunk science. This is very terrible science. This is not observing anything objectively. And how can they say that they're isolating anything? And he said, well, that's exactly where I'm coming from. Yet at the same time, the tunings that I have in the IDF software that I have programmed by my own hand have told me that there are viruses. And so I've done IDF investigations showing that viruses are exactly what Paracelsus conceived of them to be, which are ens spirituale, the cause of disease due to spirits or spiritual forces on man. And even Rudolf Steiner talks about this quite a bit in anthroposophical medicine, about the impacts, the spiritual influences upon man. And basically, when people do things that transgress their own conscience, they become susceptible to a new class of disease that originates in the more subtle dimensions of their soul and eventually precipitates into the denser dimensions of their body. And this is why Spagyric is so important for people to understand, is because so many of the illnesses that we have today are considered to be a quote-unquote psychosomatic nature, which is to say soul bodies. Psycho coming from the Greek word psyche, which means quite literally like mental body, soul body, things like that.
That's interesting, man. That's so fascinating.
Soma meaning body. So, yeah.
So like if you look at the human body as a computer, you can give the computer a virus simply by changing the code. In other words, changing the nature up of the code. So like we have like this natural process to us, the natural DNA, and it's binary and all that stuff. But I've been telling people this stuff forever, man. The more we give into this fear and negativity, and not just fear and negativity, but I'm talking about all of the bad things where we're not facing our shadows. We're not recognizing how polarity is used against us. We're letting all of these forces control us, which causes us to go deeper into fear and separate from love and things like that in our own power. And then it kind of like, these things manifest, and it's like, wow, this thing's powerful. It's man-made. Well, that's kind of ironic that we're saying it's man-made. As I feel like we could totally prevent this stuff if we all understood these Hermetic principles. I really do.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's my own viewpoint as well. And basically, IDF investigation that I perform, even though I'm very far from the finish line, so I don't want any listeners to feel like, oh, Phoenix is talking like he has it all figured out, because I don't. I'm still figuring things out on the daily. But from the investigations I've done so far, it appears as if what creates the susceptibility to what we currently are labeling viral diseases is due to a transgression of one's own conscience. So when you do something that you personally feel you should not do, this opens up a portal by which spiritual entities are able to influence your energy field, and thus eventually those will precipitate into physical manifestations. We hypothesize in peer-reviewed science that DNA is what is being altered, and there are a number of things where we're showing certain genes in peer-reviewed science that would indicate that viruses mutate DNA or RNA sequences and alter them. And that's the very best of peer-reviewed science. And what I have come to realize through going down this wormhole as a result of COVID-19 is that DNA science and genetic science is also pretty much as bad or as incomplete at the present moment as viral and virome science is. So you have to take all of that business with a grain of salt. But what I can attest to is that using intrinsic data field work as well as using Spagyric, we have been able to eliminate the symptoms of many of our research clients. And again, that's not our aim, because I'm not a doctor. I can't legally take on anybody and say, hey, the purpose of me taking you on is to try and eliminate this.
Sure.
What my purpose is to find out and to create case studies of, hey, if I analyze and I find these things, what happens if I do this? Do the symptoms decrease? Do they go away altogether? What ends up happening, so that I can publish case studies so that we can push this into the next level, which is peer review, and then push this into the next level, which is medically sanctioned peer review.
That is really cool, man. An alchemist that is trying to do things the right way to help the earth, and help people. I think that's what you're doing. That's really good work, man. I think we all should be grateful that you're doing these things. I want to ask a few more questions about alchemy, astrology, Kabbalah, magic in specific, and your thoughts on Hermeticism. We come back. We'll be right back with Phoenix Aurelius. Last break of the night. Stay with us.
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheTea.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheTea.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's getthetea.com.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast where we tell real paranormal experiences of people from around the world. And we also conduct interviews with authors, investigators, psychics, and mediums. Real people, real stories, real fear. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Fringe FM. See you then.
My name is Jake. I'm from Billings, Montana, and I am a void walker.
Hey, Joe Root. Thanks for lighting the void. This is Janine in the bluegrass of Kentucky, and I am a void walker.
What's up, guys? This is Damien from San Marcos, Texas, and I'm a void walker. I listen to the show to keep myself aligned with the world.
Hi, this is Laura, aka Laura Lavender. I'm from Las Vegas, and I listen to Lighting the Void because it helps me understand some of the strangest experiences I've had. So thanks for all that you do and for always being there for us, Joe.
Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas. The Fringe FM's new contributing artist, Eric Tisi. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot, never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover, with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadow Light Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck Wonderlight Tarot are both available now from WakingCanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's F-R-I-N-G-E at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to WakingCanvas.com today. That's WakingCanvas.com.
Ever seen an extraterrestrial? It can be hard to believe they exist unless you've seen one for yourself. What if I told you I've seen them my whole life, but have never had a witness who shared the encounter with me? Now, what if I told you I saw 4 of them, 2 with blue skin, and there are over 20 witnesses to this CE5 event? My new book, The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, documents actual accounts from real witnesses, many of which have gone on record to attest to this otherworldly reality. Be a part of the quantum paradigm shift that is taking place right now. Go to johnpolkmedia.com to get your copy of The Blue Beings, Visitation at the UFO Conference, on sale right now at johnpolkmedia.com. That's JOHNPOLK media.com.
Have you ever seen an ad or banner which brought you a feeling that someone is reading your mind or even listening to your conversations? Your online data is being used against you. Surfshark is a VPN service that makes online privacy protection easy and attainable. You can use it on as many devices as you'd like simultaneously. The VPN service that we use at UFO Seekers, plus 1 month free for $1.99 a month. Visit surfshark.deals/seekers. We spend almost as much time online as sleep, and that's 6 to 8 hours a day. The internet knows a lot about us, and that's why we should care about our online data. Use Surfshark to encrypt your personal information and send it via a secure VPN tunnel so that no one can see it without your permission. Visit surfshark.deals/seekers. You need to protect yourself from surveillance and targeted advertising. Surfshark encrypts all internet traffic sent to and from your devices and ensures that your IP address remains hidden. The VPN service that we use at UFO Seekers, plus 1 month free for $1.99 a month. Visit surfshark.deals/seekers.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada. You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, fantastic show tonight with our guest, Phoenix Aurelius. If you want to support the show, you can donate. Go to lightingthevoid.com. There's a donate button. You can also join our patrons and get involved with the Astral Journal. That is pretty cool because we're specifically talking about astral travel there, and it's all on video. We're kind of going through this stuff together. Amanda is a part of that. Then we have Ask Me Anything with Dan. He's a part of that, where we just go over questions on videos and stuff. And then there's the Outside the Shack journal where I can just go into like really depth about some of the guests that we've talked to and some of the stuff that I'm going through. And then we do tarot and astrological readings, and it gets kind of deeper from there. Mary Ducina is going to get involved. So to become a patron for Lighting the Void it's just going to be a bigger thing that grows. So all of you guys that have signed up, thank you so much. It really helps support the show. And also, if you want to help support the network, please go to the Fringe FM and donate as well. So Phoenix is with us tonight, and I was telling you during the break that I totally am into Hermeticism, and I think that it's the key thing to really change what's going on now. Like if you look at what's going on with the planet right now, based on the alchemical principles, this whole social distancing thing, this whole COVID thing that's happening, I can totally see how through these hermetic spiritual concepts that we manifested this, which is causing which this is really bad to say, I know, but if you see all like the deaths and all of these things that happen with viruses and sicknesses and stuff, it's almost like the planet is kind of sentient, doing its own kind of purification thing. Do you think that's what's going on? Because I've heard that theory before, but then I think about love and God and the cosmos, and would it really do that? But then there's also life, birth, death, resurrection type of thing, which is also kind of a principle, So what are your thoughts on that?
Sure, man. That's a great question. I just want to preface my answer with the fact that I'm still really far from the finish line in understanding this. So anything that I say at the moment is really just like my thoughts, my theories, and not to be taken as an absolute. But, essentially, I kind of feel that everything is intertwined in a very indelible way. And so when we talk about the manifestation of the planets of the elemental energies in alchemy, we talk about the four different realms of the Kabbalah, the four different Kabbalistic worlds. Okay, so we're talking about earth corresponding to the physical realm. We're talking about water corresponding to the astral. We're talking about air corresponding to the causal, or sometimes referred to as the mental plane. And then we're also referring to fire corresponding to the spiritual realm. This is a disease that appears to be interacting primarily with air. And not only would experts say that it's transmissible through the air, like for instance through droplets when you cough and so on and so forth like that, but it is also an air-based disease. So you see that all of the places that have been hit the hardest with COVID-19 have terrible air quality. Dr. Kaufman and I talk about this on our last Rogue Ways interview, where China, Wuhan, has had numerous different scientific studies published showing that the air quality was actually so bad, it was probably one of the worst in the world that has ever actually been studied. And then you see Italy, again, very terrible air quality. You see New York City, very terrible air quality. You see Los Angeles, very terrible air quality. The places with the worst air quality are the places that are getting tied up in this the best. Now, if you take what I said before and put it hand in hand with this information, does it transgress our conscience to drive cars, to burn fossil fuels, which is a misleading term? I'm going to actually call those not fossil fuels, but petroleum fuels, for energy, for transportation, for home use, for all of these things. These are the types of things that we know aren't right for us to be doing, yet we feel very disempowered as people if we aren't using them, and so we succumb and we actually transgress our conscience. Did a lot of these people get sick because they already had other factors that were limiting their immune system, like when we talk about comorbidity rates, especially among diabetic patients and so on and so forth? All of the things seem to line up that it is altering our blood. And specifically, if genetic studies are actually valid the way that they're being presented, which I feel that they are not, but using the best of the information that we have available from peer-reviewed science, SARS-CoV-2 impacts and alters the ACE2 gene. The ACE2 gene primarily deals with the cardiopulmonary system, or we could break that into two different systems, pulmonary system being the lungs and respiratory pathways, etc. The cardiovascular system being your veins, your arteries, your heart. It also deals with the kidneys, and it also deals with the gallbladder, and it also deals with the immune system. And so if you talk about a virus actually altering the genetics to prevent the proper functioning of any or all of those systems, then those who already have diseases that are going to affect those systems are going to be compromised very, very heavily, much more vastly than the rest. And we know that a lot of people in Italy, just because of the sheer rate of consumption of pastas and wheat and other different materials, they have very high inflammation and have carbohydrate metabolism disorders inordinately more than most other places throughout Europe and arguably throughout most of the rest of the developed world. So when we take a look at the information, it's all lining up that transgressing the conscience of what is actually sustainable for us as human species in working with the earth is going hand in hand with the diseases and where it's hitting the most rampant. So Iran as well, so on and so forth. That I could just continue pointing to examples. So is the earth fighting back? Maybe yes, but not necessarily in the way that people would conceive of it at face value. It's more like, guys, get with the picture and listen. Otherwise, there are inherent problems that you're creating for yourself by not working together with the biological organism that we know as Earth.
Right. And so it's not like the Earth is an enemy that's fighting back. It's just like the Earth is this globe that represents, a microcosmic thing compared or relative to the universe of all these fundamental laws and nature that Hermetic shows to us. And when we go against the grain, these kind of things happen, that's what happens. And it does its job.
It's much more rooted in natural law than what I think most people would like to admit. But that's, again, because I feel like science and so many modern people don't want to admit that there is an astral plane, yet what the astral is composed of are baser thoughts and emotions. If a single person listening to this could show me and point to and give me a quantifiable sample of their emotion in a flask, I'd give them $1,000. No question
right.
that. Yeah. Yet they deny that subtle energies would exist in many cases. And what's interesting about that is that they're interfacing with their emotions, they're interfacing with their thoughts, yet they're not concrete things every day. So why would spiritual energy or causal energy, for instance, as exists in the plane of the air, which we're contaminating, be any different? It's, it really all shares a very core thread of commonality as soon as people begin to take a look at these actual structures from a way that is slightly detached yet still relative to modern science.
I've been trying to say this in the most basic form, that there, all of us are practicing hermetics or magic, right? But there are a few practicing magicians and alchemists out there, right? And then you have this thing where we focus on a thought, and I'm going to get into this kind of cause and effect thing here with you, where we focus on a thought and then we dwell on a thought, and that comes from, the air, the thought realm, whatever. And then it causes a triggered emotion to happen to us. And then we don't realize that we're putting off this energetic or broadcasting this frequency. And then this is like how the negative, if people want to say, how people always say there's an Illuminati or a cabal, things like that. But these things are inherently, and this is just my opinion, run by forces and principalities and powers that we don't see, right? So whatever this thing is, if you want to call it the adversary or the enemy, even if that exists, could just be doing its job in nature, but that causes us to come together in fear and project that thought with emotion, then of course it's going to happen, right? It's just going to manifest. How many times in our lives have we done that, where we really don't have to do a ritual per se, but we can focus on a thought, get our emotions involved, and really picture ourselves in every visionary way that we're there, and journal it, and then I'd be damned, watch it if it don't happen. Now, you can experiment with that time and time again, And I don't understand why we're not understanding this principle. Maybe we're just distracted by everything. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Well, what you just described, that process, is actually the very first processes that are taught to an initiate of the Builders of the Aditum by Paul Foster Case. It's also one of the very first few lessons that you get in Rosicrucianism. It's basically that happiness, wealth, health, abundance, all these things, they exist in ample supply for anybody who wants to put their mental and emotional forces into them. And the key way of doing that is to be able, like you said, to journal or to write down what it is that you're looking to achieve in very clear, concise language, and to continually focus on it. And the more that you put your focus on doing that, it inevitably comes to be. And what people don't do is stay centered in themselves and what they want to accomplish. They get very easily distracted by, like you were talking about, fear or
their own shadow.
Yeah, exactly. Media projections, like all these different types of things. And so it's my assertion is exactly what you said, is that everybody is actually utilizing magic to some degree or another. What separates a magician from a non-magician or a magical practitioner from a non-magical practitioner is that the magical practitioner uses these things consciously for the exploit of his or her own benefit. And same thing with an alchemist. Everybody, once they go through my transpersonal alchemy course, they're like, oh, damn, I've done this before. I've realized this before. I just didn't put it all together like this. It's like, well, yeah, duh. Everything is doing this all the time, actually. It's just that what separates an alchemist from somebody else is that you understand the pattern and you utilize the patterns of transformation for your own benefit and for the benefit of all of society. And I think that that's a really important thing for people to wrap their minds around and to be able to start employing. I don't think that any other thing could be possibly more useful or more important at this time in history.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say to you before we got to wrap the show up here is that you brought up Rudolf Steiner quite a bit here, and if you look at our pharmaceutical industries, which are just these billion-dollar industries that through the FDA kind of we shouldn't be having things where we have to go back and like sue people for stuff, things like that. They're not doing their job if we have to do that, number one, because the medicines didn't work right. But if you look at the opiate epidemic, all of these different diabetic medications that really jack people up, like, how are we trusting the FDA and these systems to take care of us when we have to go back 3-4 months later, years later, come back and countersue them or whatever, sue them because their processes didn't keep us safe enough? Yet I know a process like yours, I can't prove it, but I know a process like yours is revealing to us that all of these healing things are in nature and all of this is spiritual, elemental, and energetic. And there's definitely something here trying to tie us all down and keep us away from learning who we really are and what this is all about.
Yeah, I mean, that's an exceptionally important point. I think that, no form of medicine is going to be 100% right all the time, because the people who are performing the medicine are always in a state of discovery, or at least they are if they're doing it properly. But they should go into it the same way that I go into it, which is saying, hey, I'm performing research. I have some really good leads and I have some great things. I feel that this is going to be pretty effective, and not try and play the game where they're deceiving people and performing junk science to perpetuate a marketing agenda that tells people, oh, yes, you'll definitely be healed, and creating more side effects than what the disease actually entailed in the first place.
Yeah, you know what I would say, man, is like if you could figure out something that would, other than psychedelics or ibogaine or anything, but if you could figure out an alchemical process that would get people off of these energies of opiates and Xanax, things like that, then I think that would be a big thing that changed the earth, because it's not a judgment. I'm not doing judge and jury in my head. I know why this stuff happens. But, after reading Steiner, it's scary, man, when you start looking into the energies and what it does, what it prevents you from doing or becoming, just imbibing or eating just something that small, what it can do to you energetically, So,
well, and That's a really important point, and I do work with a number of different addicts, primarily working with opiate addiction. In the philosophy that we have in Spagyric, there are a number of different things that need to be overcome. There's usually ens spirituale, which is the cause of disease due to spiritual influences upon man. We also have the ens veneni, the cause of disease due to toxins or poisons that needs to be overcome. There's ens astrale, or the lack of certain planetary or constellational energies and frequencies that need to be supplemented. And there's also psychological aspects too that need to be worked with, oftentimes with individuals who have succumbed to addiction for one reason or another. And in the clients and the research cases that I've seen, the reasons for approaching opiates are as varied as the amount of people who come to me. It really is not like just one demographic of like, right. Oh yeah, I started using because of this or whatever. No, I mean,
no. Yeah.
There's prescriptions, there's so many different types of things. And so it needs to be approached on a personalized basis. So I do work with folks like that. We have a rather long waiting list for our IDF services and research work. But I would definitely encourage any listeners, if you feel really attuned to myself or what I've been putting out here today, feel free to reach out to us and put yourself on that waiting list, because, I want to work with as many people as I possibly can. Unfortunately, I am only one person. And at this current point, I don't feel safe or comfortable referring anybody to the other people that I'm currently training at the present moment in order to do the analysis the same way that I do, because I've dialed it in over the last 3 years in a way that I work with folks. But in the very near future, there should be a handful of practitioners that I've certified who will be able to do this as well. So, hopefully, if not, in the very near future, at least in the next year or two, there should be a lot more avenues for folks seeking that type of relief, and at least another way of approaching it.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, because I really believe that we do need this in the world. And thank you again for coming on the show. This is a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you coming on talking to us about all of this.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I've had one hell of a time. It's been a great time. Thank you.
You're welcome. And guys, please go check out the website, phoenixaurelius.org. I'll leave all the links there for the archives and the podcasters. We do got to roll out of here because the Secret Teachings is coming up next. Please don't copy the show without written permission. Love all you guys in the Fringe FM chat. Thank you to the Fringe FM team. Big shout out to Pacho, my producer, for making this happen. It wouldn't happen without him, and all of the patrons, especially, for supporting us. We'll be back tomorrow night. You guys have a good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.